So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to paint these colorful watercolor leaves in Procreate. After that, I'll print them out and then enhance it with a little bit of gold. As usual, I'll list the brushes I'm using in the description. So before we can start, we need to make two kind of preparations. The first thing is we need some kind of sketch or drawing to work off of. And this is basically just a line drawing here, and I placed it as the top layer and set it to multiply. You could easily make your own, or you can download this exact sketch here in the description. And the other thing we need to do is modify the brush a little bit. So to paint these leaves, I'm just going to use the medium quill. And this is pretty good for painting leaves. That has a nice shape to it. But the color is very consistent. And I want to modify this brush so that each time I make a leaf, it's a slightly different shade of green. And this is pretty easy to do. I'm just going to duplicate the brush first, just so I don't spoil the original. Then I'll tap on it to open the settings. Go to Color Dynamics, and make sure you scroll down here to Stroke Color Jitter, and then you can raise the hue to around 20%. Then you can just go to Done here to apply those changes. And now when I use this brush, it's basically going to slightly shift that shade of green. And I'll start by painting the stem first, and this is going to be sort of a smaller brush size than what we use for the leaves. And I'm going to do it from the tip here all the way to the base. After that, I'll raise the brush size a little bit, and I'm going to start painting the leaves. And these are all stroke-based leaves, so I'm going to start at the tip of the leaf with a kind of a very light pressure. Then I'll press harder, follow the line, and then just lightly kind of release the pressure and then connect it to the stem. And I'll go through and do all the leaves this way, just following the lines of this drawing. And there we go, these leaves look pretty good. Next, I like to do some blending. So I'll switch off the sketch, I don't need it anymore. And I'm gonna switch to one of the water blenders, I think the background is good. And I'm gonna start using this at a really small size. And I'm gonna do two different kinds of blending. So the first thing is, wherever the leaves join the stem, I'm gonna blend that transition. And then I'm also gonna sort of try to round it off a little bit, just so the connection there isn't so perpendicular. Now this is going to make this area a little bit fuzzy, but you can always fix it by just sort of cutting it back with the eraser brush. And that covers all the blending for where the leaves overlap on the stem. Now it's a little bit different where the leaves overlap on each other. So in this case, we need to choose which leaf is going to be on top. And I think I'll make the blue one on top. So I'm going to continue with this same background water blender, but at a larger size. And I'm going to blend all the details of the lower leaf pretty much until they disappear. And I'll repeat this process for any of the other overlapping leaves. And for me personally, I really like this overlapping effect, and I'd like to have some of the other leaves doing it as well. So this is optional, but you can actually kind of move and reposition the leaves. So to do that, I'll use the freehand selection tool. And for example, I'll just select this leaf all the way to the base there. Then I can just reposition it here, maybe warp it a little bit with the transform. I'll make it overlap just a little bit like that. There we go. Then I can go in there, with the water blender again, smooth that transition, and then fix any fuzziness with the eraser brush. And then since these are overlapping, I can do the same blending trick again. And at this point, with the leaves painted and all the blending finished, we can finally move on and start adding in the bright colors. So the technique I use for this is a little bit hard to explain, but basically, everything so far is on this one layer, and I'm going to tap on it to bring up the menu, and I'll turn on Alpha Lock. After that, I'm going to switch my brush to, I think, the fluffy wash brush, and I'll choose another color here just as an example. Of course, I'm going to use quite a few colors. Now, because Alpha Lock is switched on for this leaf layer, I can't paint out here in the white area. It's only going to let me actually paint on the leaf itself. And this is sort of how I can colorize the leaf to be a very different color than the original one. And I'm basically just going to go in there and almost sort of airbrush these secondary colors onto there. And of all the steps in this process, I think this is the one that takes the longest, but it's worth taking the time and kind of carefully messing with the colors. And there we go. I think these colors look pretty good. Now next, I'd usually move straight on and do the shading. But there's a couple of issues with the colors, and I think it's a good example here. So if these leaves were painted separately and they overlap here, you can see there's a little bit of a line. But the colors that I added in, since they were sort of roughly airbrushed on, they don't really line up quite perfectly. So to fix this, I recommend going in there with the water blender again. Now Alpha Lock is still on, so I can't blend in the white area. Basically, it's just gonna let me blend on the leaves, and I'll go in there and really carefully try to align some of these colors with the edges of the leaves that the colors are supposed to be on. And while you're at it, you can also smooth out some of the colors as well, just kind of within the leaves. Now when I do this, it does help me to try to imagine how traditional watercolor would kind of flow after you made that initial leaf stroke. And sometimes it looks nice if kind of one half of the leaf is one color and the other half is a slightly other tone. And there we go. I think this blending looks pretty good. And next, we can move on and do some shading. And the theory behind this is pretty simple. I want to add some highlights to these leaves using a warm light yellow tone, and then I'll darken the shadows using a deep kind of indigo tone. So to do this, I'm going to continue working on this same layer that we've been working on. It's still set to Alpha Lock. And I'm going to switch back to that fluffy wash brush, and I'll shift my color to a very, very light, bright yellow tone. And this is of course going to be for the highlights. And I'm just going to carefully dust this on, mostly towards the middle of the leaves. And throughout this, I'm using a very, very, very light pressure. After that, I can do the shadows. So for that, I'm going to choose a very dark, very saturated indigo tone like this. And I'll kind of repeat the process, but just mostly in the shadow areas, especially along the stem as well. The whole point of this shading process is to just kind of boost the overall contrast. And there we go. I think this looks much more contrasty. Now at this point, it could be finished and we could print it, but I want to show you one more kind of trick. So you might notice in some areas, the colors are a little bit too uniform and boring. And an easy way to mix them up is just by using the selection tool, set to freehand, and you can create a sort of random selection in those areas, then reconnect it. Feather it out just a little bit. I think around 10 or 15% is enough. Then hue, saturation, and brightness. And you can just shift the hue of that area we selected and kind of add in an interesting secondary color. And just like that, these leaves are finished. So I went ahead and printed it out with my Canon Pixma, and I'm just printing on regular watercolor paper, so it does make the prints a little bit faded. So I usually spray them with some clear lacquer just to boost the colors. And then just to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm using this sort of golden acrylic paint, and I'm just dry brushing it onto the leaves. The main trick here, I guess, is try not to get the gold paint onto the white areas of the paper, because it just ends up looking a little bit dirty from far away. And that pretty much wraps it up. If you made it to the end, let me know in the comments. Hit the like button if you think I've earned it. And here are 2 more watercolor tutorials I think you'll love to watch next.